Hello, Namaste, this is Julia. I'm reading from this book, Born in Tibet. I have it for a long time already. My guru suggested to read it, but it seems now is the time to read it. So I thought I would make a little bit of an audio recording to share it and enjoy. This is a reading from the book Born in Tibet by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. I start reading at page 188. I hope you enjoy, and I give gratitude to all the enlightened beings, the lineage, my guru, the Sangha, and all the holy mountains, the lands of Tibet, and that inspire the teachings in numerous ways. So please enjoy. My name is Julia. We were a little doubtful whether it would be possible to cross the high mountain pass which lay in the way, and I thought the wisest plan would be for only 3 of us, namely myself, Akong Tulku, and 1 monk, to make the attempt under Lama Urgyen's leadership. When we joined him, he asked where we were the rest of our party, for he had been very excited at the prospect of conducting our whole group, animals included. I explained to him that the others had not come because we thought there might be difficulties in crossing the pass. Actually, when our small party reached it, the snow was so deep that we found it impossible to get through. Most of the refugees had by now gone on to the Navajo Valley, so the plateau was no longer so crowded. We decided to move to its farther end to a level spot near a lake. Yunten went to Navajo to get provisions, but found a scarcity there, and this made us realize that we must eke out our provisions and rely for the most part on sampa and wild vegetables. Karma Tenzin was also staying at this end of the plateau. He had a battery radio with him, and we used to listen it to the news both from Peking and Delhi, broadcast in Tibetan. The Peking program was full of propaganda, saying how wicked the uprising had been when the Chinese had only come to Tibet to liberate its people. However, they had now settled all the disturbances, and there were very few resistant troops left in Tibet. The broadcast from Delhi said that the Dalai Lama was already in Mussoorie. It was a surprise one day when Repun's son suddenly appeared at our camp. His father had sent him on ahead to tell me that they had sold most of their possessions and animals, and had bought extra arms and ammunition from fellow refugees. They had got past the gorge with its difficult piece of road, had crossed the bridge, and were now on the track leading southwards, where they were waiting until the sun could scout out the route ahead and see what camping grounds and grazing were available. I told him all I knew, and he went back. A number of senior lamas had now also arrived on the plateau, having traveled with various groups of refugees. Lama Urgyen thought it would be a good plan if they, together with our party, were to cross the holy mountain to a small valley beyond it, which was in the heart of the pilgrimage country. The local people had suggested to him that the pass could be crossed if they sent unloaded yaks first to treat down the snow, and they had offered to help him in this way. On studying this plan, however, I saw that the valley in question was extremely small. There would be no room for such a large party, and the conditions would be so crowded that we should fare even worse than before. I did not want to offend Lama Urgyen, so I told him that if the yaks cleared the way, there was no need for us to go together. My party could follow later. I would let him know if we decided to go first to Navajo Valley. His party made 3 attempts with yaks, and the 3rd time they were able to cross the pass. I would certainly have liked to have gone on pilgrimage to these holy places and also to have further talks with Lama Urgyen, but there was no further opportunity to do so. We heard later that when his party reached the valley, they found it was so narrow that there was not enough room for them. Moreover, it was a highly dangerous place where rock falls were very frequent, and in fact some of the horses were killed by falling stones. Meanwhile, Yunten sent some food to us from Navajo, but stayed on there himself, hoping to buy further supplies. After the talks I had with Lama Urgyen, I realized how important it was for me to go into retreat for a short time to renew my strength. In any case, I thought that we should move nearer to Navajo and hoped I might find a suitable place for a retreat while on the way there. Climbing down from the plateau, we crossed the river below it. We now had to go up a steep zigzag track which led across a pass in a high mountain range. It was dangerously slippery, for here all the ground was covered with a white slimy mud with no vegetation. Had an animal slipped, it would have crashed down on the people behind. The top of the pass was like a knife edge. However, it was easier going down on the other side, where there were trees and undergrowth. We came to a nice little open valley, which seemed a good place for a camp. A few refugees were already there at the farther end. In this quiet spot, I was even able to go on with my writing. However, the peace did not last for long, for our response party soon arrived on the scene. They were very considerate and put up their camp about a mile away from us. A few refugees were passing through, who told me that Burza Settar's party were close behind, on their way to join us. Akong Tulku and I walked around the surrounding country until we found a suitable place where one could go into retreat. It was less than a mile from our camp in a wooded spot. It was agreed that visitors could come for an hour in the morning and for a couple of hours in the afternoon, if they would bring me some food. I could make my own fires. I took with me my tent, a small shrine, and some books. Here it was possible to relax after so much turmoil, thus gaining spiritual strength in order to face whatever lay ahead. The first few days I heard some strange animal noises round the tent at night and felt a little uneasy. However, I soon found that these visitors were not dangerous. This part of the country was very different to my part of Tibet. It was warmer and there was much greater variety of trees and plants and many more animals and birds. The moonlight shone through the trees, forming a shadow like lace work on the tent. One morning, Karma Ngtrup came to see me. He was breathless with excitement, telling me that large brown bears had come in the night and had attacked our horses and mules. They had killed one horse and mauled several others. They were returning every night. Several days after this, he found a bear's footprints just outside my tent. Others of our party also came to implore me to leave my retreat, but I had no fear myself and stayed on where I was. One is ever in the grip of the law of karma, so it is senseless to worry over much. Some days later, we received an alarming message from Yuntan stating that the communists were coming through the Navajo Valley. The refugees were all in a panic, trying to find hiding places. I still thought we might stay where we were for a further day, since if the communists should come there was nothing we could do anyway. The following day another messenger arrived to say that it was a false alarm. Some resistance soldiers had been mistaken for communist troops. We already knew that after his mother had been sent to China by the communists, the young king of Dorje had organized a resistance force in East Tibet, which had been joined by other local leaders. We now heard that they had been forced to escape accompanied by a number of his ministers, with hundreds of refugees following, and they were now close to Lutsong. They had fought their way from Dorje and had been fortunate in suffering few casualties and little loss of baggage. The party had gained such a reputation for bravery that the mere fact of their being in the same neighborhood gave other refugees renewed hope. However, conditions in all the area around Lutsong were daily becoming more and more trying. Refugees were crowding into every valley, and the shortage of food and grazing was acute. Navajo was also becoming disastrously congested. In its vicinity, there were few places left where other refugees could shelter, and since all the rivers were in spate at this time of year, it was almost impossible to get across them to look for empty camping sites. Though the Chinese already had possession of most of the country, the resistance forces still held the high pass at the end of the Navajo Valley. In order to get supplies, they continually raided the communist troops on the other side, in which operation they had been very successful. It was extremely uneasy, however, for if the communists managed to take the pass, they would inevitably attack us. At one moment, rumors came through that they were actually approaching, but fortunately, there was no foundation to these reports, for after some severe fighting, they failed to get through. I knew, however, that sooner or later we would have to quit this valley, though no one could offer any suggestion where our party should make for. The final decision would have to come from me. I felt that as soon as I returned to the camp, I would be caught up again in a ferment of agitation, and I still needed to be quiet in order to concentrate on the problem of how we would proceed. I therefore decided to stay in my retreat for a further 2 weeks, which I spent in intensive meditation. One night I had a vivid dream that I was leading a party of pilgrims to a holy place. Communist soldiers were on guard beside the road, but they appeared not to see us. We came to a river, the waters of which were tinged with blood. I had just crossed it by a bridge of logs when I heard a voice behind me saying, "Some of the pilgrims have fallen into the stream." I had not seen this myself, for I was resting on the further bank. This dream made a great impression on me. This is the picture of the valley. Bears had again attacked our animals. The messenger who came to tell me about this was followed by a second monk with the news that my bursar had arrived at the camp ahead of the baggage party in the hopes of discussing things with me. He was in a complaining mood, grumbling that nothing was being properly organized. It shocked him to think that we could ever have allowed bears to get at our animals. He considered the place we had chosen for our camp to be completely unsuitable and said that we must go back to the baggage camp, which was on the farther side of the high pass. He felt quite sure that there was no immediate danger from the communists. I asked about the conditions in his camp and soon discovered that they were just as bad as in ours. The place was very overcrowded and no one knew where to go next. They had lost many of their animals through lack of grazing, besides being short of food themselves. In spite of these difficulties, Zeta was determined that we should retrace our steps and join them, and he told Yaktulku and Kinutulku that this must be done. When they hesitated, he said that they could do as they liked, but that his own abbot must definitely go back. We argued about it for 3 days, till I finally decided to reject all his proposals and informed my party that I thought our best plan would be to go forward to Navajo, as many of the refugees who had preceded us there had by now dispersed in various directions. Yuntin was having difficulty in sending food supplies over to our valley, and if we went to Navajo, food would be nearer at hand. I told Setsa that it was out of the question for us to go back to his camp. I reminded him that I had traveled over a large part of the country and had a fairly accurate picture of what was happening. I considered that our only hope lay in getting to India. He must now take active steps to sell all useless baggage and only keep the most portable things. To this he would not agree. He said that everyone else had taken all their baggage and yaks with them. However, all my younger companions were so strongly of my opinion that he finally gave way, saying he would do his best and went back to his own camp. Akung Tulku's brother now returned, having met the baggage party on their way to join us. He was very critical about the way we were always changing our minds as to which direction to take, whereas Tetzel's party had come straight by the main road. He said that since I still appeared to have no real plan, he must now take Akung Tulku and his young brother back to join Tetzel's party. If later on I made a definite decision about the route to be followed, and Setsa's group agreed, his own group could then rejoin us. The night that he was with us, the bears came again and mauled his horse, which added to his opinion that our camping ground was not well chosen. I reminded him that when I planned my escape, I had written to Akung Tulku, stressing that he must decide for himself whether he wanted to come with me or not. When he replied that he wished to join me, I promised the people at his monastery that I would do my best to look after him. Now it must again be his own decision, and if he wished to join Setsa's group, he could do so. But the responsibility of looking after him would no longer be mine. Akung Tulku's brother was rather overwhelmed by this argument, so after the two of them had talked over, he said he thought that perhaps he should go back to the other camp and try to persuade the people there to dispose of their extra baggage, but he also told me that in any case he would like to rejoin our party before long. I now left my retreat and returned to the camp. We held a meeting and decided to go on to Navajo. It was now the first week of July. Another very high mountain ridge lay before us. Going up was not difficult, but the descent on the further side involved us in a drop of some 9,000 feet. We were tormented by flies, and it was very hot and exhausting, so we camped as soon as we reached the bridge below the pass. When the villagers learned that I was in the party, they welcomed us warmly, and various families invited me to stay with them and perform devotional ceremonies. Yönten had to buy supplies without it being known that they were for us, or the people would have undercharged. Again, many refugees came to be blessed and to ask for advice. News reached us here that Lama Urgyen was finding it difficult to get supplies in his little valley and might possibly come to the valley where we were staying, so it was evident that I could no longer think of going on a pilgrimage to the local holy places. There was also some more serious news. The communists were moving towards the borders of all the districts still held by resistance troops. We heard aeroplanes at night, and the local people were getting frightened. Since we were all facing the same possible danger, there was a great deal of sympathy shown, and I was able to get much local information about possible escape routes. It appeared that if we were able to cross the junction of the Alado and Navajo rivers, there was a rough track across the mountains leading to part of the lower Kongpo Valley. However, the river had been in spate since early spring, so no one had been able to cross, nor was it known what the conditions might be like on the further side. People told me that it would be impossible to build any sort of bridge with the river in its present state, and no ferry boat could cross it. We thought, however, it might be possible for our horses to swim across, but were told that the track beside the river ran further on through a steep gorge, and that since a recent earthquake, this path had been impossible for baggage animals, because huge rocks had fallen across it. The local villagers could not really tell us much about this route, since none of them had actually followed it. I wondered if I could possibly do it all on foot, always having been accustomed to riding, and Kinutulku and Yaktulku felt even more apprehensive. However, they were determined to try. News reached us that the Derji resistance leader Kamdu Kartrop was thinking of coming in our direction, and that the Queen of Nangchen might also wish to escape by the same route. Both of them were still fighting their way through. It seemed possible that we might have to organize a large joint party rather than make the attempt with only our own small group. At all events, it was essential to keep our plans to ourselves, otherwise too many refugees might want to join us, thus making the party quite unmanageable. It was all very complicated. Rumors had it that the communists had, by this time, overrun the greater part of the country and were massing troops in the northeast, while more were coming in from the northwest. They were in full force in the Kongpo Valley and in the south. Various families had left Chogyam Rinpoche's and Setzai's groups to come to Navajo, and Rapun's party also arrived after losing many of their yaks. They all went to join us. Besides these, a party of some 80 people from Dorje's Tsering's area, led by one Lama Riva, arrived quite unexpectedly and attached themselves to us. I went down to inspect the river with several men, including Urgyen Tenzin, who had proved a most knowledgeable and competent person. There were no large waves, but the current was very strong. Orgy and Tenzin thought it was difficult to cross, but that it might yet be managed, so we sent a letter to my bursar telling him that we intended to attempt the crossing. A few days later, I was asked to perform a funeral ceremony on the other side of the Navajo River. We had almost finished it when news came that the Chinese were in the upper part of the Navajo Valley, where the resistant troops were fighting them. As we returned to our camp across the river, we found the bridge thronged with refugees pouring through it in the opposite direction. Friends whom I met on the bridge all told me that I should be going the other way, as the south side of the water would probably be dangerous. When I got back to our camp, I found all our party beside themselves with anxiety. Some of them wanted to follow the other refugees to the north side of the bridge, and all those who had lately joined our party had already gone. My people hardly dared to trust me in case I might have some different plan. Karma Tenzin's second in command was already on our side of the river. All the local people were in a state of panic, with the males arming themselves with daggers, knives, or axes, in fact with any weapons they could lay hands on, for though they had no rifles, they intended to resist as best they could. Up till then we had not heard any sounds of guns or fighting. I sent a message to Karma Tenzin's lieutenant asking for the latest news of what had occurred in the Navajo Valley. He had heard nothing definite. As far as he knew, no eyewitness had seen any Chinese, and he himself was waiting for a further message. After waiting for a couple of hours, I decided that we must move. I spoke again to the locals, who were unable to tell me anything fresh. Next will be chapter 16 on page 196. Thank you.